Hi, Saskatoon. Well, it's before 6 in the morning, so apologize for my appearance because I've been putting in exceptionally long hours to try to get this done. It's critical that this come out today, so we're trying really hard to make sure it gets done so that you can see it. It's a little bit of time for you to watch this, but if you do that, I promise you're going to learn some things you probably don't know. And also, it's going to be a lot easier for you to spend a few minutes to learn something now than to complain for 30 years because you got hoodwinked into something that you didn't see coming. So please take the time. At the end, there's going to be a couple of short, very, very short little video clips of 3 city officials making statements. I'd like you to watch to the end of that, decide who of that group were being truthful, and I'd love it if you go to this Facebook post and then you put in your comment and tell me which of them, if any, were being honest when they made the statements about this TIF financing program. Love to hear from you. Standing by. Okay, so the Downtown Event and Entertainment District, or the arena as most of you know it, for this to take place, they needed to find a way for pay for it. So they came up with this Tax Incremental Financing program. And this proposes to use increases in assessed value to pay for the arena. So basically everything within a certain area will be frozen at a point in time. And any increase in assessed value, whether through new construction or just natural assessment increases over time, all of that will be taken and just used to pay for the deed. So while your assessments keep going up on your property over, say, the next 30 years, and all of that money goes to pay for taxes, civic things that need to be done, the deed won't do that. They'll only pay for what their snapshot in time was, and anything beyond that, they won't be paying for. So their basic service requirements, the cost of that will go up, just like your assessed value taxes keep going up, but theirs won't. So they won't be paying for all the increases in their basic services over those 30 years. You will be, as your assessments keep going up. This is irrespective of the mill rate, by the way. So then the other thing that they're thinking of doing is all the new assessment increases, including new builds, then will go strictly to the deed, except the deed is going to need a lot more service, isn't it? The arena is going to need more police officers around the periphery of it, not just within the building, paid by the arena on a given night, extra officers. But when you patrol the area, they're not paying for it. You might need extra firefighters, extra fire trucks. You might need a whole bunch more snow removal than currently paid for. All of those things that are going to be extra because there's way more intensive things going on down there, even garbage collection, street sweeping. Those will all be paid by all the citizens outside of the TIF for 30 years. So you will be paying to augment all the services in the TIF for 30 years. And that's a fact. So they can pretend all they want, but the math is there. So here's the TIF boundary as last defined by the city. It's 25th Street to 19th Street, and it's Avenue D for some stupid reason, all the way to the riverbank. And they say that is the area that they need to pay for it. So this is their original funding document. I'm going to go through these fast. You can always pause them when you watch the video. Tax incremental financing is mentioned in there, which they voted for, including the mayor. She voted for it. Key assumptions assumes no tax abatements for new builds within the TIF boundary. That's important. And the other one is assumes a baseline assessment of $2.18 billion for existing properties within the TIF based on 2024 values. And then the other one that's kind of important is they say all growth scenarios exclude applying a growth factor to Midtown Plaza, which is assessed at $301 million because it's the largest property. So they're talking about growth, remember that. And then they say $150 million in new residential development within the first 5 years. So 3 250 unit apartments, and then $50 million in non-residential development. So commercial, basically, for a total of $200 million of development within 5 years is their plan or their hope that that's what they're going to get. And that's what they're basing their math on. And then there's some risk factors, and you can read through those. But one of the risk factors that's important is the amount of vacant land. And Saskatoon had half to a third of what the other cities had, because they had 32 and 43%, and we have 15 according to the city, and yet they still think it's a good plan. So there's problems with that. Last week the city came forward that they're now thinking adding tax abatements to the city center plan, which is within the tax incremental financing boundary, of course. So there's a problem, remember? And then that'll be for new construction on existing sites. And one of the things in the bottom in number 3 is it says, or commercial development, including office within the city center area. So this isn't just for residential like they might spin. And then the tax abatements will be 100% the first year, 80% the second, 70, 60, 50, and then the property will pay 100% of their property tax again. So what this means is, regardless if there's new construction, just the existing construction that's there, the day they say the value of the deed is set. So let's say we say January 1st of 2027, the TIF will be employed and all property values within that TIF boundary will freeze. So anything at that level will still continue to pay towards operations of the city. But your property value keeps going up over time, your assessed value, because that's just it. In 30 years, you would expect it's gone up. So what you've been paying to base level services just keeps increasing, but theirs won't. So they'll only pay, let's say this is a 2027 frozen in time value. Well, that's the value that they're going to pay for 30 years. And the natural growth in assessments where they would contribute to the tax base won't be there. So all of the stuff that they're adding to the TIF boundary, the cost of all these services required by the deed will be paid by the taxpayers outside of the TIF boundary right away. And then the deed itself will need extra services beyond what they currently get. So they'll need more of some things, including fire, snow removal, everything, police. You will be paying for that because they will not pay for their own operational costs for 30 years, which are going to be extra than what they get right now. So to put it in this terms, here's the drawing side by side. This is not counting any new construction. This is just existing assessment. So the deed sets the base. So their taxation over time, their assessed value doesn't change, but yours increases over time on the left. And you keep paying more and more taxes. But then, of course, all their operational costs that are missing from the right side, which is the TIF side, get added to the left. So you're going to have to cover that. So if your assessment goes up and there's still not enough value, they have to raise the mill rate. But if your assessment goes down, let's say the downtown core, the assessments go way up, it won't matter because they'll only keep paying the 2027 level for taxes to the city. So the mill rate would have to jump up even more. So there's a possibility that your assessed value can go down outside of the TIF area, and yet your mill rate will go up so high that you'll be paying more tax on less value because you got to support the TIF for 30 years. Here's the historical tax rates that I used from the city of Saskatoon. So here's the bottom is the base case. So just a $500,000 house based on 2025 tax rates and a $500,000 commercial property. If you take just the civic taxes, residential are short by $2,487. That's not counting education because right now the city doesn't have that approval. The worst case above is a $15 million new build for residential and a $15 million commercial build. Remember, they want to build 3 residential buildings, but only 1 commercial building. So they're going to get that $200 million that way. So we would be $74,608 short every year if it was a residential building over a commercial. So the more residential buildings that are in the core instead of commercial isn't good. So when you convert a commercial building to residential, if the value remains the same, we're losing money every year, which means that if they were paying for their fair share of services, they're no longer paying for their fair share, so somebody else is. And guess who that is? People outside of the tax incremental financing boundary. So here's a proposal. You take a $3 million existing office building within the tax boundary, and it's paying currently $34,704 a year, excluding education tax. And we level it right away because we're developers, and we then get it appraised at a $1 million lot, and we're only paying $11,568. Remember, it was paying $34,704. Now it's only paying $11,568. And during this time is when the TIF gets implemented. So now that $11,568 is the value of that property for the next 30 years. That's all they're going to pay towards supporting operations of the city. So that's what, a third? So the rest of the 2/3 gets paid by the taxpayers outside of the tax incremental financing boundary. So then we build a brand new building, and this is a commercial building, and it'll pay $15 million building. It'll pay $173,522 a year, supposedly. Year one, though, if they give tax abatements on top of it, means the developer keeps $161,954. The city still just keeps getting the lot boundary to try to pay for everything. Firefighters, police officers, street sweeping, that's all $11,568. That's all they're ever going to get now for 30 years. So as the abatements keep changing, all that happens is deed gets more and more and the developer gets less. But here's the math of it. What happens if we take our existing $3 million building and we didn't tear it down and we just left it for 30 years? It doesn't increase in value, it doesn't decrease, everything is locked in. We would get just over $1 million in taxes to pay for operations of the city for 30 years. But the actual amount we're going to get if we make it into an empty lot commercial is $381,744. So we're going to get a shortfall by this program of $694,000 from the tax base that we used to have. So that means somebody else is going to pay for it, and it's not anybody within the TIF. So the people that live outside of it, your taxes have to support that extra $694,000 for just this one building. So the TIF is going to take home $4.5 million. But if you go down to the tax abatement, and if the city goes ahead with that, $694,000. That doesn't change, but the deed gets only $3.95 million. And so they're short $583,000. And if enough of those are short, that means that 30-year program then probably has to extend to 31 or 32 years. They got to extend out the loan because they're getting less money to pay the car back, which is a problem, right? Because every year they extend, that means that we lose $173,522 is the tax base. So every year minus the $11,000 for the lot, we're losing that much money every year. So here's the spreadsheet on it. Without a tax abatement, we're short $694,000. But with a tax abatement, we're still short $694,000, and then the deed is short $583,000. That means that every year they extend, we're going to be short as a taxpayer $161,954. That doesn't go to paying for operations. Here's another option. It's the same building again, commercial, $3 million, the same tax rate. We level it, but now we get it rezoned to residential because that seems to be the big push. So instead of $11,000 and change for taxes, now we're only paying $6,594 a year for that lot. We build our brand new $15 million building, same value. And now the taxes for that building, city and library, are $98,914. Again, the city only gets $6,594, where we got $34,000 before for the commercial building. You see the problem? Every year we're short a whole bunch of money, and guess what? Nobody within this boundary is going to be paying it. You are, if you live outside of it. So then here's the abatement over time. And then at the end, the deed gets $92,320 a year for the remaining years, and we still just keep getting our $6,594. Again, all the taxation figures here are fixed, and all the assessment figures here are fixed. So there's some variability, but it's not going to improve things. So here's the conversion to residential. Again, if it was a commercial building, we would have got over $1 million in taxes in 30 years. So, but when it goes to residential, all we're going to get is $232,000, which means we're short $843,000, which has to be made up by somebody else. The TIF or the deed are only going to get $2.584 million. And if they give a tax abatement, we still just get our $843,000. They get $2.252 million, and they're short $332,000 over the 30 years. So there's the spreadsheets for their money, for the residential. And there's if they have an abatement. See, the abatement just compounds the problem. So we mapped out every property in the downtown core. And the yellow boundary ones, we currently don't have full assessment information for. So we're short some properties. And there's a few properties that are still zeros that aren't owned by the city or defined. You'll see there's a few blue properties. But for the most part, The green are the ones that went ahead in assessment, and a large number of those are residential. The magenta ones went down in value, and those are, majority of them are commercial. And if you look at the parking lot by the Midtown Plaza, the city bought up a bunch of properties on Pacific and on First Ave, of course. And if you take the Commissioner's building and you take the two doctors' offices on Pacific, which currently right now are assessed at just over 10.2 million, they'll go to zero once the city converts that to an arena project, and there's no longer paid renters in there. So when they level those buildings, we're going to get a zero. And so remember that, because my numbers will even get worse by another 10.2 million. So this is what the numbers are that we get. We say that the green increased in value by 155 million roughly. The magenta went down by 472 million, which is a net change of approximately $317 million. And then of course, if they go ahead, then that 10.2 million will come off that. So we'll be closer to $330 million in the hole before they even start. So our assessed value for 2024 was $2,079 million. The city claimed that all of that area is $2.18 billion. So we're short just about $100 million. But remember, some of those properties have yet to be accounted. So, but over the course of $2 billion, 100 million is a small amount compared to the rest. And there'll be some variability in that. Some of those will go up, some of them will go down. So I think we're pretty close. We can't seem to solve those other properties, so I had to let this go so that you could see it in the meantime. So we have to accept the amount of accuracy that we have. So the 2025 assessed value is only 1.761 billion according to our numbers. So here's the worst case. Let's say that the green that grew is mostly residential. We'll just say it's all residential, which is the worst case. And the commercial that went down, the magenta, we'll say it's all commercial, with probably 90% commercial. So the worst case is if that became commercial only. So if we do those two conversions and we say that the maximum growth is only residential and the maximum depreciation is commercial, we end up with 4.443 million loss in tax revenue every year. So times that by 30 years, that's just a base level. And that has to be made up by somebody, which it already is. That means that right now that $4.4 million shortfall within this area is being made up by the taxpayers outside of this boundary, which is everybody in the city outside of the TIF. Now, COVID is the reason that the assessments went down in the downtown core. I'm confident in that. I've talked to a lot of very experienced people in assessments and in real estate, and they knew this was coming. They knew that there was going to be a big downturn in assessments in this area, but it would be very predatory if the city were to start the tax incremental financing when the bottom of the assessment value drops out, because already there's a huge tax bill that's going to everybody else in the city. And if they were to lock in the assessments and then the rebound happens, like Midtown Plaza then jumps back up to say 250 or 300 million, they'll just take that as growth. And so they won't go back to even paying what they were paying for services. So they're not paying for their share from 2024 already in 2025. And the city, if they were to lock in TIF, would lock that in for 30 years. So you will always keep paying for more of their services for 30 years. And then the extra services they need on top of that, you'll pay as well. So this program was never fairly conceived, and it's very unfair. And people say, well, TIF, they give me a lot of responses, some that I can't talk about on air, but they say Tax Incremental Financing, or TIF, stands for this isn't fair. That's probably the one I can tell you personally, but there's a whole bunch of other ones that are probably more realistic as to what really is going on here. So let's go back to their key assumptions. And their key assumptions, again, assumes no tax abatements for new builds within the TIF boundary. Well, they're already trying to break that. Before the TIFs even started, they're trying to slip in the other one because you're not paying attention. And then the other one assumes a baseline assessment of 2.18 billion for 2024 values. Well, that's already down by 317 million. So we're in the hole. And remember, they said they would have 3 $50 million apartments and one $50 million commercial build within 5 years. That's what they modeled as what was going to happen. Well, that's still only 200 million. We're 317 million in the hole. So how is that really going to solve the problem? We'll be $100 plus million short still, won't we? So here's the other one, as they say, all growth scenarios exclude applying growth factors to Midtown development assessed at 301. Well, it wasn't assessed at 301 in 2024. It was assessed at 288.9. And now it's 167.5. And you can look all these up yourself. I don't know what the city's doing, but here's the three officials making these statements that I want you to watch. And if you could, I'd love for you to go onto my Facebook post then and give me your comments if you think somebody was being truthful or not, just so we can do a poll ourselves. Standing by.
And today, your administration is presenting a funding strategy that achieves the goal of constructing the downtown event and entertainment district with no increase in property tax.
If one dime of taxpayers' dollars is used to move SaskTel Center to downtown, I will not support it.
In thinking about the report where it identifies that this is all assuming that no tax abatements would be provided on new construction, is that the kind of policy direction we've seen in other cities as well?
The whole theory of tax incremental financing is the development is the incentive. Building a hotel next to the arena is the incentive. Building restaurants and condos next to the arena is the incentive. The public investment is the incentive. So to apply another incentive above and beyond that kind of diminishes the whole theory of a tax incremental financing zone, and that it is supposed to be the incentive to build within that zone. So certainly council could choose to have both incentives, both the public investment as well as the abatement. That would change our funding model, as taxes would not flow in to repay the debt as soon as we would have projected in this model.